Hello my bookworms, welcome back to my channel. My name is Sydney. Why did I do that? Today we're gonna be chatting about all the books that I read in the month of August. So hey, what's up? How are you? I hope you're doing well. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. So far this year, January has been my best reading month, and I think I read somewhere around 3,900 pages in January. And in this month, I surpassed that. I don't know what happened. I don't know how it happened, but I had a really good reading month. It might be because I did a challenge vlog this month and actually stayed off my phone a little bit more than I usually do, which there is a vlog coming for that. But I'm excited to talk about these books that I read in hopes that maybe it'll inspire you to pick up some of them as well. So let's get on into the titles. There are 11 or 12, hot dog, 12 books that we're gonna chat about. So let's just begin, shall we? I'll just start right on the top since you can already see what this book is. I ended up finishing the Dreamland Billionaires series and finished The Final Offer by Lauren Asher. This is a romance trilogy where there are 3 brothers. Each brother has a different book from their respective point of views, and their grandfather has died, who was the creator of Dreamland, which is basically Disney World. And in order for these brothers to get their share of the company and it not to go to their father, who we don't like, they each have a task that they have to complete in order for all 3 of them to get their shares. So each book follows each brother completing their task, and this one is following Callahan, our sweet little damaged boy. I mean, they're all damaged, don't get me wrong, but like Callahan more than the others, I think. The first book in the series is by far my favorite, and I just have a few issues with this one. I think that the way that addiction was portrayed in this story was a little bit wishy-washy. And I say this because there was a quote that the main character, Alana, who we follow, because we follow Callahan and Alana, the love interest. And there was a point in the story where Alana was saying, if he cared about me, he would get sober. And that's literally not how it works. Like, addiction is so much more than that. There is so much that goes into it. The addict has to want to do it for themselves, but then later in the book, she like changes the narrative and says exactly that. So the way that things were described were just not very consistent, and I know emotions are high in these situations, but like the inconsistency of the addiction or how it was written was just a little bit annoying to me, I guess. There were some cheesy lines, repetitive things going on since it is so freaking long, but ultimately I still gave it a 4 out of 5. I had a good time. This series was an absolute joy to read, honestly. I had a lot of fun. It is very addicting. Next, we have Some for the Wild Built by Becky Chambers. This is a short little jaunt of a story, shall I say. And basically we're following a tea monk and a robot. And in this world, the robots like gained self-awareness, put down their tools, and just like walked off into the wilderness, never to be seen again until now. One robot named Mosscap, who is my favorite thing in the world, comes and interacts with Dex, who is our tea monk. And they go on this little journey because Dex is going through kind of like a little crisis. They don't really know what their purpose is, and they're struggling with that. And so they kind of learn from each other. It's a short little, like, I don't know, meditation on the purpose of life, what really matters, that sort of thing. And it was really nice. I think that I need to reread it. I am going to give it a 4 out of 5. Before I sat down, I was feeling like a 3.5, honestly, but now that I'm reminiscing on it, it feels more closer to a 4. I think that this is one that I will reread because 1, it's so short, and 2, it really was fun, and Mosscap really is hilarious. I think that everyone could glean a little something from this one. The next 4, I'm not going to go into great detail on because they are books that I read during this challenge vlog that I am currently filming, so my thoughts will be much more explained in that video. For future reference, it will be the video that is swapping my screen time for reading time, and eventually I will have it linked down in the description, but I am not finished with it yet. But so far in that vlog, I have read Something in the Water by Catherine Steadman. This is a story about a couple going on a honeymoon in Bora Bora, and they find something in the water while scuba diving, and it ultimately changes the whole trajectory of their life. Then we have Outline by Rachel Cusk. This is basically a story about conversation, connection, and how we tell our stories. It's almost like stream of consciousness, and it is the first in the series. I will be continuing. I will leave you with that. Then I also picked up Carey Soto is Back by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I did not have high hopes going into this one, and I would say that my expectations were relatively confirmed. More to come, obviously. Then I finished The Wager by David Grann. I will say that this is a phenomenal nonfiction. It reads like a fictional thriller. The amount of research gone into this book, it has to be astounding. And just this cover is just one of my favorites of the whole year. Wow. But yeah, all 4 of these were read this month, and more thoughts to come. The next one is Kaike by Vishnavavi Patel. This is a more like feminist retelling of the story of Kaike, which I was unfamiliar with before I read the story, but I did watch a interview with Vishwanavi Patel explaining the sort of goal that she had when she set out to write this book, and I would say she did a phenomenal job because this book is great. On surface level, it kind of seems like a classic fantasy story where a main character, Kaike, gets married off off to a neighboring city, province, I don't really know, but for like alliance purposes, right? And she basically discovers that she has magic that is hers alone, and with it, she transforms herself from an overlooked princess into a warrior, diplomat, and most favored queen. But as the evil from her childhood stories threatens the cosmic order, the path she has forged clashes with the destiny the gods have chosen for her family. And Kaike must decide if resistance is worth the destruction it will wreak, and what legacy she intends to leave behind. This book has the like god-chosen trope involving one of the main characters, and it was written so well. Is this a debut? I'm unsure, but I do know that I will read from this author again because I think that she's going to do great things. This was really a joy to read. I actually read this in one day. That's almost 500 pages. I know I started early in the morning and I finished it within like 12 hours. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars. Next, I did finish Ace by Angela Chen. Look at me reading 2 nonfiction in 1 month. Like, who is she? This is a nonfiction about asexuality and sort of the spectrum within. The author takes interviews that she had with multiple people and kind of compiles what she learned and what she gleaned from their experiences as well as her own. And it is like insanely informative. It is almost like a dictionary handbook for asexuality. I genuinely think that everyone should read it. I think that the ace spectrum is very much misunderstood. I learned a lot from it, and I would bet that you would too. It was very well written, and the audiobook is phenomenal. Next, we have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas. I feel like whenever I introduce a book in a wrap-up or anywhere, you can tell immediately how I feel about it depending on how I say the title. But this is the author that wrote The Hacienda, and I read that in January and absolutely loved it. And this book is basically a Western romance that also has vampires and like battles. I think that this book might be a little bit mismarketed because before I read this book, I saw a review on Goodreads that had mentioned that this book is basically a romance. And I changed my perspective on what I was expecting on this book before I went into it. And I think that if I didn't do that, I would have been a little bit let down maybe, because there is a heavy focus on the romance in this story. And it was great, but if you were only expecting a like high stakes supernatural battle Western thing, it might have not been what you really wanted. But since I was like adequately prepared mentally, I had such a great time. Because there are supernatural vampire battles, and the vampires in this book are depicted in such a cool way. Like, I really ended up loving this story. When I first finished it, I was like, oh, this is a solid 4. And then I could not get this book out of my head for the next 36 hours. So it crept up to a 4.5, and that's where it sits in my heart. Isabel Cañas is just an incredible writer. I really love her stories, and she has become an auto-buy author for me, for sure. The next one I'm really sad about. I never thought this would happen with one of his books, but I tried to read The Frugal Wizard's Handbook for Surviving Medieval England by Brendan Sanderson. That is such a mouthful for a book title. I ended up DNFing this one. I'm super sad about it, but honestly, like, I was lying to myself for so long within this month that I was like, maybe if I tried to sit down and read it instead of just listening to it on audio, like maybe I would like it more. And then whenever I had the thought of sitting down and reading this book, I was like, I don't want to do that. The audiobook is phenomenal. So if this book sounds good to you, like, please do read it. Like, I know that there's an audience for this book out there, but it isn't me. Maybe I'll try again in the future, but I might be lying to myself right now. It's basically about our main character who wakes up in a different like timeline in medieval England, and he has like amnesia. He's unsure how he got there, and he's having to figure it out piece by piece with this handbook that he has with the pages scattered everywhere and with other people within this world. I don't know. Like, it was fine, but the way that it was written was just a little bit too silly for me. I don't know. I just was not vibing with the choice of humor. It just wasn't my cup of tea. So I ended up DNFing this one. I got pretty far though. I think I got almost to 50% actually. So I really did try. Second to last is Inkblood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. This was a story about families protecting magical libraries and the secrets that they hold, and familial loyalty, betrayal, and the pursuit of magic and power. So this is one of those books that has kind of too much going on for me to actually tell you like the gist any more than that, because surface level, we have our 2 main characters who their families protect different magical libraries. They don't know about each other yet, but they obviously end up finding out. One of them is like a very small time familial collection of books that have been passed down forever, and you know, the family has protected them always. And then the other main character has like this big time library. Like, everyone in this part of the world knows about it, and they are sometimes contracting the people guarding the books to make them spells, sort of like write me a spell to make water into to wine sort of thing. And one of the main characters has the power to create and write the books, but you have to write them in blood. And as far as he knows, he is the last one that can do that in the world. So he is obviously a very sought after human, right? And it gets a little bit crazy. Obviously things start to overlap and the stakes get really high. I had a good time with this book and it was a solid 4 stars. I feel like there are so much going on within the story that a couple things could have been omitted and other things deep dived into a little bit more just to make it a little bit more fleshed out, because I still don't really know if I understand the magic system entirely, and it's gotten to the point where I just have to accept that I just might not understand it entirely. But ultimately the story itself was fun. I loved the main characters. The magic was fun, just a little bit confusing. Might just be a me problem though, and I would be interested to pick up more work from this author for sure. The last book was Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree. This book, it's coming out I think in November. Yes, November 7th, and it is the prequel to Legends and Lattes that we've all been waiting for, following Viv, who is an orc running with the Rockham's Ravens, which is a mercenary crew. She ends up getting hurt and has to spend an extended stay at this like port city named Merc in order to heal before she can go back and like kill people, you know? And so she's forced to slow down in this little sleepy town, and she gets close with the bookshop owner and the pastry maker and the barkeep, and it's just so cozy. It is a cozy fantasy, but it also has some paranormal aspects because the people that the Rockham's Ravens were after was a necromancer. So there's some paranormal stuff, there's a battle, there is cozy everything. And it was an absolute delight. I loved Legends and Lattes, and I equally loved Bookshops and Bone Dust. They both have very different vibes in my like internal space, and I don't know if I can choose like a favorite because I really do love both of them. I ended up giving Bookshops and Bone Dust 5 stars, and it should be on your radar for this fall. So all 12 of these books, the overwhelming majority is 4 stars. Some were a little bit more disappointing than others, but a really solid reading month. Definitely will take some of these and put it on my like will recommend always shelf, and some will just be like I'll forget about them in a couple months, which is fine. I still had a great reading month, and I hope you guys did as well. Thank you so much for being here and hanging out with me for a little bit. If you are still watching, let me know your favorite book of this past month that you read, or one that you're really looking forward to, or if you don't know what to say, then leave me the woman dancing in a red dress emoji down below in the comments. And while you're down there, don't forget to subscribe and like the video. I always appreciate your support, and of course, be kind to one another and happy reading. Bye.